Hey everybody, welcome back to, sliding my seat up a little bit. Welcome back to Tim Travels. I'm your host, Terry. So I'm coming to you from Calhoun, Georgia. It's kind of weird. So just to update, last week was in terms of mileage, and so that matters to me because I get paid by the mile. Last week's mileage at the company I'm at was my worst week since I've been here. And again, not because I wasn't willing to run. And, you know, people say, oh, the July 4th holiday, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, because they said that over, my driver manager said that about Memorial Day, and I'm like, I don't care. I wasn't home. It's not a holiday to me. On the bright side, I did get $100 for holiday pay, but the company I work for has a minimum guarantee, and they actually had to kick in money. That's how low my mileage was. I had 2,010 miles last week that I was paid for, so they had to kick in some money for me to hit my minimum. Not a lot, like literally like $1, but it's still, it's not good. And my weekly average is probably only in the 2,200 mile range, so it's not good. It's kind of funny. Somebody said, because I mentioned that I'm not wed to this company. Not that you would ever be wed to any company, but they said, oh, the grass isn't always greener on the other side of the fence. And I think I thought about that saying, and where it comes from, by the way, is if you're some kind of city slicker that's never been on a farm or never been around cows or whatever, you might never notice that cows, and I don't care if the fence is electric, barbed wire, they don't give a crap. You might have never noticed that cows will stick their head through the fence at the edge of a pasture to get to grass that's outside the fence. And the reason is because that grass is typically better grass, at least to them, because it hasn't been grazed and mowed down by all the other cattle grazing there. And so oftentimes you'll see cows lined up by the fence and sticking their head through to get to the grass. But the interesting thing about that saying, at least to me, is that people always say the grass isn't always greener on the other side of the fence. And my response to that is, yes, it is. It's always greener on the other side of the fence. But if you get on the other side of the fence, not just stick your head through the fence, but you get on the other side of the fence, you're gonna be like, oh, the grass on the other side of the fence is greener. In other words, there's, no matter where you are, you always think something is better. So anyway, So I picked up a load. I had a load that I picked up in Florida, and man, I was so happy to get out of Florida. I hate running Florida. There's nowhere, there's just nowhere you go that there's not heavy traffic. I guess there might be some parts of Florida, but I haven't found them. The whole place is just heavy traffic, like pretty much constantly. And, they're just, and I gotta say this, if I was governor of Florida, the one thing I would do, the very first thing I would do once I became governor, is I would mandate that every vehicle in the state must have automatic headlights and that cannot be disabled. And I would especially do that with frickin' rental cars. I drove through Orlando the other night. It was later. It was like around 11. So right when all the bars were emptying out on International Drive there. And I can't tell you how many frickin', rental minivans I saw with driving down the freeway with their headlights off. It's like, just make them automatic on rental cars, because people, it's like trucks. You're supposed to do a pre-trip. You're supposed to understand how all the buttons and stuff work, and that's what you get trained for. But people come down to anywhere, and they rent cars that they have really no idea how everything works, and they're just like, well, they just got off the plane, they just jump in the car and start driving. Well, that's cool until you got to turn the headlights on. And I guess people aren't bright enough to understand that when the dash lights are blinding you at night, it's because the headlights are off. Like, if you turn the headlights on, the dash lights will dim on modern cars, right? They will go down a level unless you crank them up, I guess. Anyway, I was so glad to get out of Florida. I got a load going up, Coca-Cola load that went up to Chattanooga. So I took that and delivered it last night, but then my fleet manager asked me to bring a trailer here to, it's I guess technically it's Mohawk, but it's Shaw, and drop that trailer off that I had the Coke load in across the road here. I'm at exit 310 off I-75, so it's the exit with Loves and those trucker hating punks at Buc-ee's. That's the exit I'm at. So I dropped the trailer, and then my driver manager wants me to pick up a different trailer at a different Shaw facility. I think it's at Shaw up in Dalton. So I'm going to do that. I kind of wanted to go to, because then I'll have to pick up my load until tomorrow evening, so Sunday evening up in Covington, Tennessee. I kind of wanted to stop and see either the battlefield at Chickamauga, which I have never been to, or at Murfreesboro, which I've also never been to, or at Franklin, Tennessee, which I have also never been to. I don't know if that's going to be possible with a trailer, because like when I went to Shiloh, I parked right outside the park and just rode my bike in. And it's interesting that I'm mentioning all these things, and I'm in the Western Theater of the Confederacy, because today is the birth date of famous Confederate Lieutenant General Nathan Bedford Forrest. Forrest was born in near Chapel Hill, Tennessee in 1821. All those places I mentioned, he fought at. So Shiloh, Chickamauga, where else did I say? Murfreesboro, yeah. Franklin, yeah. The verdict on Forrest is kind of complicated. Forrest was, there are two things that really harmed his image, and rightly so. One is the Fort Pillow massacre, and the other is the fact that he was like part of the Klan, the Ku Klux Klan at its origination, and probably even if he wasn't like super involved, he was like the Grand Wizard, and he certainly recruited people that were. But I think when you look at Forrest's role in the Civil War was he spent his own money to equip cavalry units, regiments, and he was truly a self-made millionaire. But of course he made his money several ways, selling cattle, brokering real estate, but he also was a slave trader, and that's where he made all his money. His money was all spent mostly during the Civil War trying to equip troops and do that stuff. But I'm kind of when I look at his record, it's not as great as people might seem. it's kind of one of those things where when you're surrounded by clowns, you will, if you're just like average, you will look really great when you're surrounded by idiots. And he was surrounded by two pretty famous idiots in terms of Confederate generalship. One was Braxton Bragg, who would have lost the battle at Chickamauga, but for the fact that James Longstreet, kind of saved the day. And also Bedford Forrest did important things holding the Confederate right flank there. And here's the interesting thing. After that battle, there was a huge blow up between Forrest and Bragg, and Forrest threatened to kill Bragg, and Bragg was his superior general. But Bragg didn't even report it to like Confederate high command because that probably was a death penalty offense, and he certainly would have been cashiered from the Confederate Army. The other person that he served with was John Bell Hood in the Franklin-Nashville campaign in late 1864. And basically, Hood, destroyed an army with foolish tactics. And not that the Confederates were ever going to ultimately win, but he hastened the defeat of the Confederacy in the West by his actions in 1864. Bedford Forrest conducts a rearguard action just to cover the retreat there at Franklin, and on his own, I think Forrest really only won one semi-significant battle at Bryce's Crossroads on his own with his own independent command. So there's that. Born in 1821. Also on this day, in 1787, the last and most significant of the Northwest Ordinances was passed by Congress, and that's the ordinance that kind of governed how the Northwest Territory, which is west of Pennsylvania, east of the Mississippi River, and north of the Ohio River, was going to be become states. And this is important if you've ever been in or are from Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, Illinois, and Indiana. The interesting thing about that, though, is that the ordinance said that area had to be at least 3 states, but no more than 5. The other thing that's interesting is there were other Northwest ordinances, like in 1784 and 1785. And what I didn't realize was there were states in the East that had claimed, almost like a colonial power, right? States in the East had claimed that, and this, by the way, this is before the Constitution is ratified by all 13 original colonies. But these states in the East, like Connecticut, Massachusetts, they had claimed portions for their state of the Northwest Territories. And Jefferson is the first one who, I think in 1784, put together the Northwest Ordinance to kind of federalize that area so that you didn't have states. And Connecticut actually refused to relinquish its claims to part of Ohio. So for a while, in 1784, Jefferson does the first thing that talks about how they will become territories, and then also in 1785, Congress has surveying done. But I saw an older map that showed part of I guess it would be it's the area in southeastern Ohio. So if you ever take 35 from Chillicothe down towards West Virginia, it's that area. And Athens, Ohio, that area. And Connecticut had a claim to that. So it's just kind of funny how things work out. But then the 1787 ordinance passes, and then that leads to what we now have today, those 5 states I mentioned. Okay, so enough about my travails Oh, so I got to pick up that load in Covington, Tennessee, which is out by Memphis, out western Tennessee. Then that comes back to Georgia. So I like Florida to Tennessee, back to Georgia, back to Tennessee, back to Georgia. That load delivers on Monday in Georgia, and then I'm picking up a load of flooring and going out to Texas. And really, this trip out to Texas will be the first time, other than going down I-55, like from Illinois to Memphis, basically. You know, like when you go across 57, you cross Mississippi. That'll be the first time I'm west of the Mississippi, and certainly, you know. So I'm kind of sick of Florida and Georgia. Anyway. So I wanted to follow up on a couple of things and do a little housekeeping. So a while back, I set up a GoFundMe because I wanted to create an app that could match like food that needs to be disposed with people that are willing to take food that needs to be disposed from refrigerated trailers. And I mean, I guess it could work with non-perishable, like canned goods or whatever. If you had canned goods that were rejected and somebody's like, throw them away, you could give that away. Some people were very generous and contributed to the GoFundMe. But it seems like I have, for whatever reason, and maybe it's because I'm not, marketing it enough, but I haven't really reached this like critical mass that I felt like I needed to get to. I felt like I needed to get to like $20,000, and that would, in my mind, that would be enough for developing the app and getting it on the App Store for both Android and iPhone, but also for some publicity. And I wasn't really, I thought about in areas where I know there's just tons and tons like of grocery wholesalers. Those are the places that typically reject stuff. Walmart sometimes, but like there's certain place. There's a place I went in New Jersey with produce, and I had a fair amount of stuff rejected. And I went to a Blue Beacon, and there were other Prime drivers there that had stuff rejected. And when I did the claim, they were like, "Oh yeah, that place." Like it was like routine, like on a daily basis, they were rejecting stuff that Prime drivers were bringing in there. But long story short is, I don't think I'm going to reach that number. And so somebody asked me what I would do with the money if I didn't get to that number, and I originally said I would just give it to a food bank, but I don't know that I want to do that, because I don't know if that's what people really wanted their donations to go for. So what I'm going to do is not, unless I get to the 20,000, and who knows, maybe just talking about it'll get me there. But I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to remove the money from the possession of GoFundMe. And what'll automatically happen in a few weeks is that GoFundMe will send the money back to the donors. They will just push it back into whatever account it came from, or give a credit on a credit card or whatever. And the reason I know this is because they send me emails and they're like, "Hey, you need to transfer this money away. You need to pull your money out and put it in your bank account," or And I'm like, "Well, no, I'm not going to do that until I get that critical mass." So if you did contribute, I appreciate it very much, and that's but that's what's that's what's going to happen unless other people get me to that point. Then I can get somebody to develop the app and stuff, and I will do that. So I wanted to follow up on the story I did about TMC. So there's this guy named Drew Harvey that's the right now he's the complainant in a discrimination notice that's been filed in Iowa. And he has a civil rights attorney who has handled other cases, because I did a little research, and his civil rights attorney is a guy named Ben Lynch, I believe, who's based outside of Des Moines in Clive, Iowa. And he's handled other discrimination cases. He does employment law, etc. And one of the things that I went back, and people were commenting on stuff, and they're like, yeah, it's their policy that you can't have hair below your collar or whatever. And some people said, oh, well, maybe he's just butthurt because they fired him, because he wasn't up to standards, and so he's saying, oh, they fired me because of my hair. And I'm all about finding out what the truth is, and at least understanding all the moving parts. So what has happened so far is that a discrimination complaint has been filed, probably with the Equal Opportunity Employment Commission or some agency in Iowa that's equivalent to that. And there hasn't been a lawsuit filed yet, because they're waiting for a response from TMC. Now, if they don't get a response, they will file a lawsuit. But here's the thing. The guy in this case, a guy named Drew Harvey, and I'm going to show you a picture of him in a second. He says he was at TMC for it wasn't like the first day. It was like, I don't know exactly how long, but I think it was at least a couple of weeks he was at TMC. And he was told he was doing, and he used the word splendid, which is, it's a nice word. I don't know if, and he said they used that word to describe his performance, but they were like, but yeah, you got to cut these dreads. And he's like, okay, well, I could trim them or adjust them. And I'm going to show you a picture in a second. I could trim them or adjust them. And they're like, no, you need to shave your head, which is pretty radical, right? So I don't, and where the truth falls, it's hard to tell. But here's a picture of him in a hard hat. And he said that other people were allowed to basically put their hair up. Like women in the military used to always put their hair up. They could have long hair, they just had to put it up. A while back, the Air Force just said, yeah, you can wear a ponytail, we don't care. So he was basically putting his hair up and then plopping a hard hat on him. So here, take a look at this picture of him. So, it seems, like I said in my previous video, when a lawyer takes a case, they don't want to lose, right? Because the lawyer is out money just by taking a case, right? Because unlike, like if you had an engagement, a contract to mow somebody's lawn, right? And every week it was $100, which is what it is at my house. And it was $100 to get your lawn mowed. And then you didn't pay the lawnmower dude, right? The landscaper guy. The landscaper guy would just quit. But that's not how it works with lawyers. If I'm practicing and somebody comes to me and I take their case, I say, yeah, I'll represent you. Especially at the point where I've filed something with a court or with an administrative agency, I basically, what I've done is called entering my appearance. If I enter my appearance for a client, I cannot quit. Even if they're like, yeah, I'm never paying you, right? I don't like you. I'm not going to pay you. I can't quit that engagement without permission of the court. So the attorney here he's already taken this case. He's on the case, right? Like, he's talked in the news media. There is clearly an attorney-client relationship. He's not going to take this case if he doesn't feel like there's some merit to it. Like, there's a way to get something for his client and a way for him to get paid. So, I know a lot of people may think that that's not important, and they don't put any weight on that. I do, however, because I know what it's like to have, to be in an engagement, and you don't get to just pull out without asking. So I don't know what's going to happen here with TMC, but I do think it's interesting. And they have been sued. I don't have a sense of how often trucking companies get sued for discrimination, but TMC has been sued a few times, both for this issue and for other issues. And so take that for what it's worth. The other thing I wanted to mention is more layoffs in the trucking company. Averitt, I think that's how you say it, Express. They're an LTL carrier, but I don't usually see them dragging pups like I do, like Estes or Old Dominion or ABF. Usually Averitt has these, they usually have just vans that I see them towing. But they had a facility in West Palm Beach, Florida. Speaking of Florida earlier, they had a facility in West Palm Beach, Florida, and they lost a contract with Costco. I guess they were pulling Costco's trailers. I'm assuming it was pulling Costco trailers from distribution centers to stores and back again, obviously. They lost that contract and they laid 51 drivers off. And, that's a lot of people for a local economy to try to absorb. So I don't know if a lot of those guys are going to try to stay local. Sometimes when contracts are terminated, those drivers can end up getting on with the new contractor, because now the new contractor has lots of work. So best of luck to those guys. That's a perfect example of why truck drivers really need to understand as best they can how the sausage is made, because I'm sure that there were drivers hired there, and when they were hired, they're like, yeah, we got this Costco contract, we're golden, right? We always have work. Well, that's true until you don't. And it's important to understand not only how your company is diversified, but how your location is diversified. And I'll give you an example. If you go to Walmart, a lot of Walmarts, not all of them, but a lot of Walmart distribution centers have third-party contractors. I see US Express, I see England, I see Martin, I see Swift, and there's probably others at these Walmarts. But like I've said in the past, all it takes is one person in Bentonville, Arkansas, sitting in an office overlooking the interstate there, and they're like, yeah, I don't want to have Martin delivering. And I know for a fact Martin does it at the Toma, Wisconsin. They might be like, yeah, we're just gonna hire 80 drivers there over the next 3 months now, and we're gonna terminate Martin's contract. Now Martin, those drivers might just transition over to Walmart. As I said, that happens with contracts. It happens in the defense industry all the time. Guys are like, oh, my company lost its contract. Oh, and I would be like, what are you gonna do? Like with the NSA or something. I'd be like, what are you gonna do? Oh, just go to work for the new contractor. They're hiring everybody. So sometimes, and hopefully that's what happens with these guys at Averitt, these people at Averitt in West Palm Beach, Florida, they just transition to the new carrier. But it's important to, speaking of like sayings, grass is always greener on the other side of the fence. This is a saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket. At least understand where your company is positioned in the marketplace, where their strengths are, and understand that just because a company is healthy doesn't necessarily mean that your job is secure. And there's still a lot of contraction going on. There's still a lot going on, and you know, we'll just have to see how this shakes out. I mean, this trucking recession it continues. I mean, I think it is getting better anecdotally, but that might just, you know, it's like I said before, when your neighbor gets laid off, it's a recession. When you get laid off, it's a depression. So a lot of times it might just be perspective. And, you know, I hear people saying, oh, it's getting better. And I really wonder if that's just, you know, wishful thinking. Is it legit trend analysis where they say, yeah, I can look at the last 9, 10, 12 weeks and I can see that my numbers are continuing to tick upward. But if it's up and down, and then you take the cap and it's just a straight line, or you take the mean, it's just a straight line, then really it's not getting better. It's just, you're just looking at it from week to week, or even month to month, and that's really not, you know, that's not how this industry works. That's not the long term. I mean, yeah, you might have an extra $500 this week, but it doesn't mean you're not going to give it back next week, or, you know what I'm saying, end up a little short next week. So anyway, I appreciate everybody, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.